Hey guys, we are going to take notes on Chapter 2, Section 1. As you can see, it is on adding and subtracting integers together. Should go pretty quickly. Let's get started. Here we go. So look, adding and subtracting integers is an important skill to be able to do without having to go to calculator every time. All right? Adding and subtracting integers mentally are going to lead you to be able to simplify algebraic expressions so much easier. I think it's a worthwhile skill to have. I claim that adding and subtracting integers takes 3 steps. And you do these steps mentally almost instantly. So it really doesn't take that long. But let me explain how to do each step. The first step is to simplify the signs in the problem if needed. Of course, you always want to simplify the problem before you get started. And then step 2 is decide whether to add or subtract the numbers together. Sometimes it looks like you subtract, but you really add, and vice versa. And the last step, decide what sign to put on your answer. The wrong sign on the answer is the most missed thing I see. So we're going to take a look at each of these steps individually. All right, step 1. Step 1 is to simplify the problem by combining any of what I call double signs. So what is a double sign? Let me show you. In an addition or subtraction problem, when a number has 2 signs in front of it, you should combine the 2 signs into one sign. Looks like psi. That means the same thing. All right? When there are 2 signs in front of a number, combine them into one sign. That means the same thing. It makes the problem so much easier, especially when we get into algebra problems. So look, this only happens in 2 cases. One is when you're adding a negative number. For instance, if I had 5 plus negative 3, so I'm adding a negative number. I'm adding negative 3. This is what I'm talking about, having 2 signs in front of a number. The 3 has a negative sign in front of it and a positive sign. And sometimes you'll see that written without the parentheses. Sometimes it'll look like this. All right? And it's obvious that the 3 has 2 signs in front of it, a positive and a negative. Whether there's parentheses in there or not, we do not want 2 signs between the 2 numbers. So what you want to do is you want to combine them into one sign. And a positive and a negative sign is really just like having a negative sign. So a plus and a minus is really just a minus. That's the first one. So anytime you see a plus and a minus, we're going to combine them into just a minus. All right, the other time this happens is when you're subtracting a negative number. For instance, you have 5 minus negative 3. Again, you have 2 signs in front of the same number. 2 signs in front of the 3. 5 minus minus 3. And we are always going to take 2 signs like that and combine them into one. So when you have minus a negative number, we are going to change that to plus. two minus signs next to each other make a plus. So again, anytime you see minus minus, we are going to turn it into a positive. All right? That's the first thing. Secondly, step 2, after you have combined the signs. Step 2 is decide whether you're going to add the signs together, or add the two numbers together, or subtract the two numbers. And let me give you a couple examples here. First, I think this is more important when we start doing algebra and we have a string of numbers, but you might try circling the numbers, including their signs. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Here's the bottom line. When two numbers have the same sign, you always add them. And when two numbers have different signs, you always subtract them. And you always subtract the bigger number minus the smaller number. It doesn't matter what order the numbers came in. You're always going to do the bigger number minus the smaller one. So let me give you an example. For instance, if we had -3 minus 5, all right? So we've got these two numbers, and I want to combine them. Am I going to add or subtract? Well, look at this. I've got two choices with these numbers. I can either take the 5 and the 3, and I can add them together, or I can take the 5 and the 3, and I can subtract them. The key is back here. Do the two numbers have the same sign in front of them, or do they have different signs in front of them? And in this case, they both have the same sign in front of them. They both have a minus sign in front of them. It doesn't matter that technically one of those is a negative sign and one of those is a minus sign. Both numbers have the same sign in front of them. So we are going to, by this rule up here, we are going to be adding the numbers together. Now look, this little note here. Once you decide whether to add or subtract the numbers, don't worry about the signs. Just add them or subtract them. And in fact, you guys, I go back to the circling thing. I think it helps to circle the numbers. I think it helps to go, all right, here's my two numbers. Ooh, -5 and -3. Now it's obvious those two numbers have the same sign. And so I'm not going to subtract them, I'm going to add them. 5 plus 3 is 8. And probably most of you know, but technically the answer is -8. I'll get to why it's negative in a minute. But the point is, because they had the same sign, I added them together. Now, one more example might be, what if I had -3 plus 5? All right? Again, this is just a adding or subtracting. Am I going to add or subtract? You know, it seems like it's an addition problem, but watch. Again, I like to circle them. So here's my two numbers. I'm either adding or subtracting. And when I circle them, it becomes obvious. Do these two numbers have the same sign? So add them. Or do these two numbers have different signs? So subtract them. Well, of course they have different signs. So in this case, I'm going to subtract. And again, once I know whether I'm going to add or subtract, I pay no attention to the signs in the problem. I take the 5 and the 3 and I subtract them, just like this. It doesn't matter which one's positive and which one's negative. I just take the bigger number minus the smaller number. So 5 minus 3, which is 2. And in this case, it would be positive 2. Right? So when the two signs are different, you subtract. When the two signs are the same, you add. That is the key to step 2, and you do that mentally in 2 seconds. One more to go. And the last one is decide what sign the answer should be. This is an easy one. When adding and subtracting, always use the sign of the bigger number. Now, technically, that's the bigger number when they don't have signs on them. Let me show you. If I have -3 minus 5, we just did this one above. We know that these two numbers have the same sign, so I'm going to add the 5 and the 3 and get 8. But what sign goes on the answer? The sign of the bigger number. 5 is the bigger number, so whatever sign is in front of the 5 goes on the answer. It's -8. What if I have 7 minus 11? Well, let's see. First of all, I'd say these two numbers have different signs. The 7 is positive and the 11 is negative. So I am going to subtract the bigger number minus the smaller number. That's going to be 4. And then I have to decide what sign goes on the answer. Well, 11 is the bigger number. He gets to put his sign on the answer. The answer is -4. All right, here we go. We're going to try a couple just like the homework, and we will be done. Okay, first of all, you're going to have a section just like this on the homework. All right? Don't try to follow the directions. You don't actually have to solve these. You just have to rewrite them so there are no double signs. I don't want you to get the answer. I just want you to rewrite the problem. Now, if you're really good at this point, you'll pause the video, and then you'll come back and see if you got the right answer each time. Like before each problem, you could pause it, see if you get the right answer, then unpause it and see if we get the same thing. Here we go. Problem number 1. Because there's a double sign in front of the 3, this one needs rewritten. And I know that a plus and a minus is really just a minus. The answer should be -7 minus 3. Number 2. The 11 has a double sign in front of it. That needs to be rewritten, and a minus minus becomes a plus. So I rewrite it as 10 plus 11. Number 3. The 2 has 2 signs in front of it. I need to rewrite this problem. I need to simplify it and make it -14. Ooh, what's a minus and a minus? A plus. Number 4. Ooh, the 2 has 2 signs in front of it. So I'm going to rewrite this one as -5. What do those 2 signs make? -2. Number 5. This one does not need rewritten. There are no, there's only one sign in front of the 10, and there's only one sign in front of the 1. Number 6. This one does not need rewritten. It also only has one sign in front of the 32 and one sign in front of the 5. But number 7 does need rewritten. The 11 has 2 signs in front of it, and a minus and a minus would become 4 plus 11. And last up, number 8. I've kind of blocked number 8 there, it looks like. But it needs rewritten because the 3 has 2 signs in front of it. And this would be -2 plus 3. How'd you do on that? Are you able to simplify problems when a number has 2 signs in front of it? I hope so. Last thing we got to do is practice a few problems. Again, if you want, pause the video, get the answer, and then see how I did it, because I really want you to do tonight's homework like I'm doing these problems. I want you using these 3 steps to do the problems. So, number 1. Number 1 does not need rewritten because there's no double sign. I'm going to circle the numbers because I think that helps. Am I going to take this 11 and 3 and add them, or am I going to take the 11 and 3 and subtract them? Well, because they have different signs, I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get 8. And the 11 is the bigger number, so the answer is positive 8. Of course, when there's a positive number, you don't need to put a plus in front of it. 8 means the same thing as positive 8. How about number 2? It does not need rewritten because there is only one sign in front of each number. Am I going to add the 5 and the 2 or subtract the 5 and the 2? Well, these two numbers have the same sign. So that means add. 5 plus 2 is 7. And now, which sign goes on the answer? Well, 5's the bigger number. He gets to put his sign on the answer. Number 3. This problem does need rewritten because the 4 has two signs in front of it. So this would actually be negative 8, and we know that minus 4 really means plus 4. Now I'm ready to decide whether to add or subtract. Again, I like to circle the numbers. The two numbers I'm combining, negative 8 and 4, have different signs. So I'm going to subtract. 8 minus 4, that's 4. And 8's the bigger number, so he gets to put his sign on the answer. Negative 4 would be your answer. Number 4. I do not need to rewrite the problem. I do need to circle it. Now let's see. These numbers have different signs. And when they have different signs, I subtract the bigger minus the smaller. So 15 minus 9 is 6. And since 15 is the bigger number, he gets to put his sign on the answer. It would be negative 6. Last 4 problems. Number 5 needs rewritten because the 4 has two signs in front of it. So this would be negative 7 minus 4. Now these two numbers have the same sign, so am I going to add them or am I going to subtract them? Well, you guys all know that now. When two numbers have the same sign, you add them. So I get 11. And 7 is the bigger number, so he gets to put his sign on the answer, negative 11. Of course, two negative numbers always make a bigger negative number. All right, we get to one with 3 numbers in it now, and this needs rewritten in both these numbers. So this is going to be 11. Now, what's a plus and a minus? That's really minus. And what's a minus and a minus? That's really plus. Oops. And I'm now ready to add my numbers together, 2 at a time. So I'm going to start with the 11 and the negative 4. Of course, we can all do 11 minus 4 probably, but I'll go through my little spiel. They have different signs, so I'm going to subtract and get 7. And 11's the bigger number, so it's going to be positive 7. And then I still have this plus 7 that I have not used yet. And so when I combine these two numbers, they have the same sign, so I'm going to add them together and get 14, and the bigger number is positive, so it's positive 14. Number 7. I do not need to rewrite this problem. I'm going to start by combining the first two numbers. They have the same sign, so I would add them and get 8. And 6 is the bigger number, so it's negative 8. And then I would bring down the numbers I have not used yet. And now let's do the next two numbers. Negative 8 and negative 5. They had the same sign, so I would add them and get 13. 8 is the bigger number, so I put a negative on the answer. And I bring down the number I have not used yet. And last up, these two numbers. They need combined. Well, they have different signs, so this time I'm going to subtract. and get 10. And 13's the bigger number, so he gets to put his sign on the answer. The final answer is negative 10. All right, we're going to skip the last problem. I think you've got the idea. Good luck on the homework. Make sure you do the back problem on the homework just to see if you can do it. Good luck.